and welcome to today's webcast, Artificial Intelligence as a Competitive Advantage. Before we begin, I'm going to play a brief housekeeping video.
Welcome, and thank you for viewing our webcast series. Before we begin, please keep the following in mind. You can customize how you view our presentation and interact with the presenter. For better viewing, close all other applications and turn up your speaker volume. You can adjust window size and placement or enter full screen mode using the controls of the top right of the window or dragging the bottom right-hand corner to resize. At the bottom of your screen, you'll see a series of icons that relate to a different aspect of our session. You can download a PDF of today's slides from the Slide Deck and Handouts widget. You can ask questions by typing in the Q&A window and clicking Submit. We'll do our best to answer all questions or follow up via email. If you experience technical difficulty, refresh your browser by hitting the F5 key. This presentation is not legal, investment, or accounting advice. We encourage you to seek the counsel of a professional service provider to apply this content to your specific circumstances.
I'm pleased to introduce today's presenters from Moss Adams, Loren Denherter, Managing Director, and Casey Fike, Senior Manager. Loren is a firm leader in business intelligence and corporate performance management. He helps businesses improve their processes, become more efficient, and make better decisions. Casey is a senior manager in our enterprise systems consulting practice and holds DOMO professional and technical certifications and is a certified data management professional. With that, I'll turn it over to Casey to get things started.
Chad, thank you. And thanks everybody for attending today. I think this is something we're really excited about, and hopefully you all are as well. Things that we want to talk through today, kind of overall the artificial intelligence landscape. I know there's been a ton of talk as of late around AI this, AI that. We'll talk through kind of how we think it through that overall landscape at Moss Adams, and then jump into how we're using generative AI, so these large language models such as ChatGPT, and then moving on to like how we are helping our clients effectively, safely use AI within their organizations, and then talk through, if you're exploring this within your organization, how you might be able to get started. But before we jump in, just a quick poll. Interested to know how you're using AI within your organization. So I'll give a bit here, but feel free to click and let us know.
Yeah, Casey, what we're finding in conversations is, officially in organizations, they may be at, one of these levels or maybe going to be, a fast follower or something like that. In reality, what we're finding is it's a more complex answer in that there are people that are individually out there using it. And while it may not be an overall sanctioned thing, and it's kind of important to get out in front of that, or there may be pockets of it, so different organizations have a variety of answers around this. It's getting to be a really interesting space.
Gotcha. So just seeing here, not sure how it applies to the business and where to start grading. I think, Lauren, kind of like you were saying, it's going to vary by organization. I think we've heard about this, we're interested. How do we get this into our business processes? And we'll talk through that today.
And this really is what we're hearing out there as well. It kind of mirrors the conversation around lots of interest. There's not always a lot of deep understanding of exactly how does it apply and what does it mean. But, this is something that we have to get in front of. So, yeah.
Definitely. Great. So moving on to just the landscape. So it kind of like what I led with, as of late, there's been a ton of talk of AI in varying shapes and forms, but this is something that's probably been around since the mid 50s. I think kind of a couple key things I want to talk through here is that the Dartmouth Summer Research Project in AI, that was kind of the official quote unquote start of the term artificial intelligence. in 86, the backpropagation algorithm around machine learning. How do we train models? We'll talk about that a little bit later as well. Late 80s, the U.S. Postal Service implemented image recognition to help sort mail. And then kind of we get into the late 90s. I don't know how many people would remember this. I do, but just IBM's Deep Blue and Watson winning Jeopardy, that really stood out to me. And then in 2017, a big push on these large language models with that attention is all you need paper. And this was pretty key. I won't get into all of the technology behind it, but that was a big push.
Yeah, and what's interesting in that history is there's first kind of this academic, and that went for kind of decades. And then when the post office put that neural network into their sorting algorithm, that's when AI kind of joined as a participant, and that's when it changed the business process. The others following that was increasing capabilities, so as behaving as a participant, not necessarily in the business process. So that kind of held there for a while, and then now these new models are really making their way as a business process participant as well.
Great, thanks for that. So moving forward and how we think at Moss Adams around AI, kind of two separate streams. Here, machine learning. This is statistical analysis, modeling, data mining, very task-specific neural networks. It's your predictive analytics, classification. So kind of thinking about how we might take data, train models on that, and then forecast around, if I'm a retail organization, what could I price this item at to see sales increase, market trends, things along those lines. I think if you think around healthcare and logic regression, how are we testing how effective drugs are around treatment approaches. Generative AI, we'll focus on this today, but this is your generated content. Again, so like, as I mentioned, large language models, this is generating text, images, video, voice, image animation. A lot of human interaction here. And I think this has kind of been, as of late, the big push that we've heard a lot about, kind of whether it's in business and media, whatever that may be. Both of these, just to draw out, they're both trained using neural networks. The difference between the two are, with your machine learning, I'm taking large data sets, I'm training my own or my organization's models on that data. Whereas generative AI, I think a lot of us have heard of ChatGPT. That P within the GPT is the pre-trained. So these models have already been trained, and now it's interacting with them. Loren, I don't know if you have anything to add there. Or...
Yeah, and so like you say, all of this is on neural networks. And with the advent of this pre-trained transformer, the T side of that has turned those neural networks into something that can be more general purpose. And you can interact with them in a natural language kind of way. And that is what has caused this explosion in the conversation, is the use case on that really begins to expand dramatically. And so while machine learning still definitely has a place out there, yes, and it is a much more intensive process of making those specialized neural networks. But on the generative side, when you get to the general use case that goes with that, and you can use it in specific ways, it's pretty amazing, and that has got a lot of attention.
Great. So again, kind of continuing with the generative AI approach, you mentioned this, Loren, but these models, they're designed to interact with you and I, the end user, on generating text, images, like I mentioned earlier. Second point there, businesses are finding a lot of creative ways to use this. Like hand up here, I know we use our internal model, which I'll talk about later. I use that daily for a variety of different tasks, which we'll cover. I think this next point, if I put my data governance hat on and I see safe, it's if I'm interacting with models outside of my organization, my data, what I'm sending, whatever that may be, is being sent to those models. That exits kind of our firewall, if you will. Whereas, keeping that within, it's a matter of keeping your data safe and understanding what is being sent, who in our organization is sending, what's out there, because those models will harvest that data and further be trained on that. The last two bullet points, I know you and I talk about this quite a bit, but our approach, what I've seen, and this is from my own experience, I'm using these LLMs, our LLM, to augment, be a more productive worker, more efficient, more effective, kind of do more within the same amount of time. And I think the last piece, again, something that we talk about quite a bit, it's AI is not coming for your job. It will, as it mentions there, reshape the competitive landscape. And what I mean when I say that is, it's those individuals that can effectively work with these LLMs that will continue to push forward, whereas those individuals that not may struggle. So comments there, Loren?
Yeah, and I can't overemphasize enough those last two bullets. There's, first of all, if you take one word away from this webcast, it's the word augment. It is meant to work alongside, it's the person and the machine together. If you have just the person, there's the capability of the person, et cetera. If you have just a machine and it runs amok, that's not a great experience. But when you are giving the person a machine to work with, and then they're accountable for the results, they have to vet those results, some pretty amazing things can happen. And so that's taking and bringing AI in as a participant in that workflow, and it can dramatically speed things up. Here at Moss Adams, we actually change some of our own internal business processes on how we generate work, and it is very effective. And if we're not doing it, then likely our competitors are. And so that's that last bullet there, is that the AI by itself is not going to rise up as this monster, but people are begin to use it or have begun to use it, and it is for sure reshaping the competitive landscape. So the fast follower is maybe that's the way to go. This feels like one where you really kind of need to be out in front of it.
Great, thanks. So I think kind of nice segue there, and how do we use this? I think first point here, it's an interactive chat, right? It's a conversation I'm having with a large language model, an LLM. I think that is it's new technology. Everybody's kind of understanding how to effectively use this. And that's a big jumping off point, where these LLMs have been trained on petabytes of data, whether it's Wikipedia, other sources. There's a number of different sources that I know GPT's been trained on. They don't widely broadcast that, but I know Wikipedia is one of the ones it has been trained on. And as I have conversations and I type in questions, responses, feedback to these LLMs, it's taking that information that I'm asking, training itself, redirecting the conversation. If I might be asking for X, it's slowly, but then those responses, I need to shift that response to Y to maybe get a little bit clearer answer, what I'm looking for. It understands that. The next piece here is it's not a search engine. It's not your search engine of choice where I just type in anything I might be looking for and it kicks back a series of websites. It's designed to have a conversation with you. And I think the last piece, when I think about safety, how to effectively use these LLMs, have been trained on a wide variety of content. Loren, I know we talk about, we had this conversation earlier today. There's over 200,000 large language models out there that can be used. I think it's understanding, if I'm interacting with an LLM, I need to vet and verify that information and not just take it at face value. Again, back to that first point, it's a conversation, right? So if I'm having a conversation, you and I are having a conversation, you may say something that might not quite resonate with me. I just still need to go validate that. So I think kind of big picture here, these LLMs, they're designed not as a search engine, it's conversation, and you do need to verify, refine what you're getting as a response. So thoughts there?
Yeah. And it's, yeah, like I say, it's interactive, voice, image, a lot of what got the attention is the whole text side of this. And yeah, just to call out again that, the user really needs to, in a simple way, say, keep your brain on. So when you get something back, question it. So, be good about really vetting what you're getting back. And is it in your experience? If it's not in your experience, research it out and see a couple of things. One is this new information that's coming in. Are there some IP rights around it that you're going to need to pay attention to, or is it content that you can use? Or did the model just hallucinate and tell you a bunch of garbage? And so it's important that you do really look at the results. The results come out are amazing. Their ability to, speak with some authority is pretty amazing, but you need to keep your eye on it.
Yep. It's a great point. And again, the point about 200,000 different LLMs that I think we're aware of, they've been trained on different data sets. Some are larger, some are smaller, some are more focused, right? It's a really understanding, who am I having this conversation with? So using generative AI in your workspace, I think we can talk. I have a lot of concepts here, and I know we'll cover this, but first of all, that speed and breadth. Again, LLMs, a lot of information, a lot of different topics they can cover. Again, as I was mentioning earlier, depending on what they've been trained on, what data sets or information they've been trained on, you can get a lot of different information out of it. Another big piece here around research and development. I think I do a lot of software development. This has made me a more effective, faster coder, where I can feed in, I'm receiving a bug, help me out. Just because Microsoft errors aren't the most friendly, it can help point me in the right direction. I can gain an understanding and, again, be more fast, efficient around my development. Another option, or another way we're doing this also, is just from a marketing standpoint. Can you help me get started on an article about LLMs, right? Output comes out, again, I verify, but something that would take me 8 hours to do, I can cut that down to a fraction now because I'm able to interact with these LLMs. Another key piece here is that usage and safety, where, again, vetting and verifying what has my model been trained on, setting guidelines within your workplace and organization on, here's how we as an org can use an LLM. Which one are we using? How do we interact with it? How do we vet it? How can we then, another key point, which we've been doing and helping our clients with, is how do we take our internal documentation and then have an LLM within our firewall and then train that LLM on our own internal docs, whether that's policies, procedures, knowledge bases, which I know we'll cover a bit later in the presentation. But again, avoiding sending that information to public LLMs that exist outside of our firewall. So again, I think key piece here is options are available where organizations can use these LLMs internally, keep their data. Loren, anything there to add?
Yeah. So, yeah, that last piece that you covered there is really where it gets into the really strong business case of being able to say that you can run these models internally so that you're not putting data out into a public space that can be used for training. And because now that you have that, then taking information that is internal policies, procedures, all of those kinds of things, and have the model be able to work interactively with users and respond back in a natural language kind of way. I like to say, pedestrian language kind of way, makes them super effective in not just the speed at which they can get the information, but the ability to then talk about that, take technical things and talk about them in very real language. And so that means that they are embedding themselves right into the middle, and it's this participant in the business process and moving that forward. And so that is where we're finding that the business processes are changing and competitive advantages coming into play.
Spot on. I mean, it's made me so much more effective, which we'll kind of cover here on how we're helping our clients. So what we're looking at here, this is what we use internally. Again, with this, all of our data, first and foremost, it's safe. It stays within our firewall or in our environment, if you will. We're not sharing data externally with these LLMs. We've pulled an LLM into our environment. We're able to take our data, further train that model to get a more customized, focused experience. So again, we've taken some policy documentation, we've taken procedure documentation, technical manuals, things that we've worked on, again, keeping it all within our environment, right? So safe, reducing risk, not sharing, not using external public-facing LLMs. Again, as I mentioned earlier, not sending our data out there, it'll then be trained. That LLM will then use it to be trained. But again, it's that last bullet there. It's a platform that really has empowered our organization. And I know our team, Loren, uses it quite a bit to be more effective. So thoughts there, comments?
Yeah. So this is, for years, businesses have tried to craft knowledge bases. And there's a lot of things that have been stored, but they haven't had a great track record on being super effective at helping people to use that knowledge and apply it to their particular situation. And a lot of times that data is kind of unstructured. This is the first technology that has truly solved that problem. You can take a knowledge base, ingest it into here, and chat with it, and it is truly effective at then disseminating the knowledge that has been ingested into it.
Great. And I know we'll cover that here momentarily as well, but I do have some. So again, Loren and I have talked about this, but it's kind of big takeaway from this presentation is how do we use LLMs within our business, right? So I think what we're looking at here is this is how Moss Adams is using an LLM. And again, our business, consulting, audit, tax, probably different than your business, but here are some use cases that we have found that have made us more effective. So this first one, I talked about this earlier, but content generation. If I'm trying to create an article or some sort of presentation, I'm using our internal LLM to kind of get that process going. Again, it outputs an article, if you will, but I can't just take that and run with it. It's a matter of, again, vetting and verifying, tweaking some things. But again, the large amount of time that I was spending, that's greatly reduced. Policy accessibility, Loren, I know we talk about this quite a bit, but what's the leave policy? That knowledge-based concept or just where our HR policies are located. It's a 100-page document. and I'm having to sift through there. But kind of what we've done internally is LLM, I'm talking to you. It's what is our maternal leave policy, whatever that may be, kicks out that information. And then it also kicks out a link to, or outputs that information, outputs a link to say, here's where that information is located within the HR policy. Would you like to go to that? And then Loren, the piece you were talking about, the knowledge bases, right? I think SharePoint, probably a lot of guides have been put on there throughout the years. The organization that might have spread, you might have multiple SharePoints, but it's a matter of these LLMs. We can put technical documentation. I'm receiving this type of error from this system, this hardware. What's a remediation option? Again, that takes me right to it. I don't have to sift through a 300-page manual or try to run something down on the internet. So,
yeah, very good. It just changes some of the skills that are needed, and so that necessarily changes the business process, and you find efficiencies. There's a whole bunch of things that now, as a participant, it enables a different flow.
So here's how we're helping our clients at Moss Adams. So showed you that screenshot of that tool earlier. It's around, helping clients understand we're interested in this. How do we stand this up on our own? How do we keep our data safe within our environment? I mentioned, there's a number of different LLMs. How do we select that, find the right one for there? So developing these internal LLMs that we showed earlier for our clients, ingesting proprietary data. Also something that I talked about we're doing internally is how do we take our docs, our knowledge bases, our policies, our procedures, how do we feed that into our own LLM so we can give a more customized, specific approach for those end users within your organization. Educational workshops and trainings kind of led the discussion off with this, but new technology, how do we train our workforce to be more effective by using these LLMs? So it's that change management. How do we ingrain this in our business processes? How do we become more effective? Ongoing support and maintenance and incremental usage expansion. Again, understanding this, how do we expand, whether it's additional documents, changing our documents based on what we've seen from feedback from our LLMs, and then just additional use cases. So, Loren, anything to add there? I know we're...
Yeah, when you talk about ingesting data and going through these, then as soon as you say that, what happens then is you bring it in, the business moves forward, things change, and so it's not just ingesting the data. It is then saying, what is the data flow for bringing in updates and shaping it in a way that makes it most effective?
Gotcha. Great. How we're getting started. So kind of, again, the change management aspect I talked about, and again, we talked about this with the polling question is, a lot of people said that this is interesting. We'd like to get started, just not sure how. Kind of thinking through this is establishing that champion, like who is that person that's going to be kind of leading the charge. I think a big thing is identifying use cases with the organization. What sort of data do we want to feed into this LLM? Who's going to be promoting the safe and effective use of this technology? And then from there, it's just selecting a platform, right? And I think, again, as I mentioned earlier, this is something that we can do, but it's understanding also which LLM do we want to use? What's the right fit for organization? And again, there's a number of different ones out there. Some are very large from a size perspective. Some are smaller, more specific use cases, but understanding what's right for us. The third point, training your workforce. Again, new technology, like I was saying, but how do we effectively use this and then continuously improve? What are we learning? How are we falling short? Where do we need to improve? How do we need to what do we need to do to keep this moving forward? So to wrap it up, I think kind of key points here are just AI, we've heard all about it. We're going to keep hearing about it. This is not going away, but it's not necessarily a new topic. It's been around for decades. LLMs, which was the key point of our discussion, these are those text-based, how do I have a conversation, generate images, text, voice. And then Loren, you brought this third point up, and again, we talk about this quite a bit, but this is not coming for your job, but it's an extremely effective tool to augment your workforce and make your organization better. So again, kind of the pieces that we can help with, how are we developing, again, keeping our data safe within your environment? How are we ingesting that data with those data pipelines that you talked about, Loren? Change management and continuous support. Like, how do we get this effective within our organization? So, Loren, I don't think if you have anything to add. If not, I can pass it back to Chad.
We researched this out deeply. We're here to help. And this is something where it is going to change the competitive landscape.
Great. Chad, back to you.
Awesome. Thank you, Casey and Loren, for a great presentation today. And if we didn't have time to answer your questions, we will do our best to follow up with you after the webcast. And here's a link to an online survey where you can provide feedback for today's presentation. Please take a moment to complete this as your feedback is very important to us. Thank you for joining us, and we'll hope you join us again next time.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.